this gotta be the best sequel ever since Empire Strikes Back, and I'm not even exaggerating. I am a bit mind blown. I've just walked out of the theater after watching a double feature of both Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. Where do I even begin? I'm a big fan of Denis, and having previously not really watched Dune 1, I haven't watched it properly. I decided 2 weeks ago to book myself a single ticket to the IMAX double feature screening that they had listed at the cinemas. Did I mention a single ticket? This was kind of a big deal for me because I had never previously attended the cinema alone, but I had heard so many positive reviews of other people doing exactly that, particularly Carson Runquist. I decided to just go for it. And as I said, I hadn't really watched Dune properly. I remember I watched it in 2022 with my dad on our normal TV, and I think I fell asleep during the movie, or at least I didn't pay attention. And I don't even think we finished it. I think we just stopped halfway through. And I didn't pay attention, which, looking back at it, I should have. And for some reason I logged it 3 stars on Letterboxd when I hadn't even finished watching it. But don't come for me on that one. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, I knew nothing about the plot, the universe, the characters. I hadn't read the books, like nothing. I was going completely blind into this double feature. And it was a big risk, because this could have been me going to the cinema alone, watching a double feature which totaled to, I think it was like 6 hours. I could have easily just hated every single minute of it, but I didn't, and I'll get to that. I checked out the IMAX cinemas, and I saw that there were only single tickets available. The only available tickets were at the front row, but then you'll watch the movie like this, and you'll end your night like this. So I decided, why not just watch it alone, you know? Why not just go to this movie alone, completely experience it for the first time, as you should, you know? Like, just you and the movie. Anyway, I'm going to do a quick review of Part 1. If you're only here for Dune Part 2, then you can skip to this. Alright, I guess there's no one here now. I heard mixed reviews about Dune Part 1. Some said it was boring, someone said they slept through it all, and overall that the movie was a snooze fest. But I sat in the cinema completely captivated. This movie is the perfect first movie of a franchise type, because there is so much lore, there's so many characters, and so much history to be fleshed out. You know, it's a huge universe and so much material. You can't really expect it to be explained to you in like 1 hour. There's just too much to be introduced, and I think the pacing is perfect to not make it all overwhelming. I understand why some might say that this was boring and that nothing happened, but that's probably the people who didn't watch it through the first act. You have to let it stick, and I think Denis lets it stick by not overwhelming you with the information. And personally, I loved it. You know, the beautiful visuals and the sound, the authentic and not so flashy performances made this a comfortable introduction to the franchise. I think the movie flew by. It's a perfect introduction, and I wouldn't have made this movie any other way, if I'm being honest. The attack scene in Part 1 was by far my favorite sequence. It was just devastating, like wiping out an entire bloodline and a house in one night. It kind of gave me this Game of Thrones vibe, how it was just so relentless in its pursuit. But yeah, I loved Part 1, and it's definitely a 5 out of 5 for me. It's an astonishing achievement in science fiction filmmaking, and you know, this had me so hyped for Dune Part 2. And fortunately for me, Dune Part started literally 2 minutes after the end credits, which was a bit funny considering people who had watched Part 1 had to wait 3 years for Part 2. And here I was, just getting it right away. So, the main part of the video, the main review you came for. I'm going to keep this spoiler free because I want everyone to experience this for themselves. I don't want to give anything away. I think this is a movie you have to watch. We start off right where we left off, and the opening scene, man, oh my. Oh, it was perfection. You know, you had these orange graded beautiful cinematography and just astonishing visuals. There were some beautiful scenes in that opening, man. And when I saw that, I knew I were in for a freaking ride. I don't know how to actually describe this movie or this experience, because it's something that words cannot justify. There isn't enough words in the dictionary to describe this movie. Many people will probably ask me, well, which movie do you think is the best? And I'm gonna say this, as a standalone movie, which I don't think you should judge the movie, like these kinds of movies like that either way, because it's a franchise. But as a standalone movie, I do think Dune Part 2 is better. I think it's better as a continuation of Part 1. You know, the execution is perfect. There's the visuals, the sound, the cinematography, the story, as I said, the character arcs. I mean, this is a technical marvel in science fiction filmmaking, and it just took everything that was good in Dune Part 1 and just made it 10 times better. But either way, I don't think you should judge them like this, because they don't work without each other. Like, Dune Part 1 it's just as important as the second one, because you have to build out the world, you have to flesh out the universe. So I don't like to differentiate, because essentially these two movies could have just been a 6-hour standalone movie. They have just cut it in two, or at least that's how it feels like. Sort of like Lord of the Rings or Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. But yeah, Dune Part 2 is better. But let's talk about the cinematography. I was just in awe watching the movie unfold in front of me. And I think this was enhanced by the fact that I was alone. It was just me and the movie. And you know, the visuals combined with the sound, that's what Denis is all about. There were just some insane scenes in there, which had my heart pounding like crazy. And that's the last time I had an experience like that in the cinema was when I watched Oppenheimer for the first time. Let's talk about Austin Butler. The introduction scene that he had was freaking insane. It was like a black and white segment in a big arena, and you know, he looked terrifying with no eyebrows. I think he did a great job as the villain. I was not familiar with his game, at least not at this level. He's gotten some hate recently, which I don't know why. Maybe it's because of his portrayal in Elvis.
Get a haircut, Barry!
But this gotta cement him back to, like, gotta get people on the other side again, because this performance was perfect. I also saw some people on Twitter compare his performance to Heath Ledger's Joker, and I just want to say they are completely different performances that shouldn't really be compared. I mean, their role, their character, the context of the villain, the screen time they had. You know, Heath Ledger was way more vital to the story of Dark Knight. Obviously, Fade Rauta was important, but you know what I mean. I don't know if I pronounced that character's name correctly, but yeah. And another thing, there was a lot more humor in Part 2. In Part 1, almost no laughter throughout the theater happened, but there were so many funny segments, and I think that's especially because of Javier Bardem. His character was hilarious, he had so many fun sequences, it was just very, very funny. Zendaya and Timothée, both incredible, especially Chalamet. I mean, that guy is not just a beautiful face. He is going to be one of the greatest actors of our lifetime, and I'm not even exaggerating. You guys can all come for me. That guy can act, bro. It's insane. There's one scene there, without spoiling, where I was genuinely like scared, and I didn't even recognize Paul's character, and I was like, and especially Timothée, because he's not really a, you don't really get scared by Timothée, but I was scared, bro. Astonishing performances by the both of them. Zendaya's arc, or her character's arc, is so interesting, and she plays the role perfectly, because it's a very complex character. You know, she has this subtle love interest, but is kind of conflicted by her beliefs, and I'm very excited to see where her character goes in Part 3. The ending fight, I don't feel like that's a spoiler. I feel like they have marketed that on all the trailers and stuff like that, but I'm not going to say who it is between, but you probably know, even if you haven't seen it. That's one of the best hand-to-hand combat fighting scenes I've seen on the screen. I mean, the choreography, my brother would love this scene. He's very interested in like medieval fighting and choreography, and he would just bloom of happiness watching this scene. And I don't know much about fighting, and even I loved it. And I especially love when there's like a 1v1 fighting scene, and there's like no epic music to enhance the fight. There's just silence and sound of fighting. That makes it so raw and authentic and like real, and it kind of is epic. The deliberate choice of not using sound makes the fight better. And talk about music, I haven't even talked about it yet. Hans Zimmer, that score gets repeated throughout the movie, and there's like one song which is just crazy, and I'm going to listen to that when I'm running or at the gym. Yeah, I can't even describe it. You just have to feel it. That horrifying bass sound that just elevates the multiple sequences in the movie. It's just crazy. I'm very glad that this movie came out when it did, because this year's Oscars are so stacked, and I really think this is going to take home every award possible next year. They're going to sweep the whole award ceremony. Timothée is going to get Best Actor, Austin Butler is going to get Supporting Actor, Zendaya and Jessica Ferguson are going to get Best Actresses, music to Hans Zimmer. It's going to get Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editor, Cinematographer is going to win for Sound. I think Denis will get his Directing Oscar, and Dune will get Best Picture. I don't even know how many awards that is, and even costume design, visual effects, maybe even there's a new casting director award that's coming next year as well. They're going to get that because the cast is insane. Denis is adapting a book that's so incredibly complex, not just by the story but just in visual filmmaking. To be able to put that story on the screen is remarkable, but he manages to do so in a spectacular way. This is not just a science fiction movie with visuals and sound. The creator from last year did that. This has the politics, the drama, the story, the character development, the relationships between the characters, the family houses. You know, it's like watching The Godfather set in a science fiction universe with so many creative elements, and there's a hint of Game of Thrones as well, as I mentioned earlier. Denis is slowly becoming one of my favorite directors. I mean, top 5 at least. And if the third movie is as great as the previous two, or even better, that's gotta cement him into one of the greatest directors of all time. And I'm not even exaggerating. He has Dune Part 1 and 2, he has Incendie, he has Prisoners, Blade Runner, Arrival, Sicario. I mean, the list goes on and on. I didn't really think about the fact that I was at the cinema alone. And I think that's a portrayal of how good these two movies were for me. I thought it was going to be weird, but honestly, no one cared. I didn't care, and you shouldn't care. These two movies just made me forget about that fact, and that was beautiful. And I think this was my favorite cinema experience, like, ever. And I like to believe that this was what people felt like going out of the theaters in 1980 after watching The Empire Strikes Back, or in early 2000s when The Lord of the Rings came out. And I'm very glad that I have that opportunity to have something like this, because, well, I wasn't born when when Lord of the Rings came out. Both of these movies are getting 5 out of 5 for me. I consider giving part 1 a 4.5 out of 5, but after watching part 2, the first one couldn't really have been made any other way, and for me it was perfect. And I think that's how you should judge these types of franchise movies. I think you should judge them together when they're so coherent. This was my first review on this channel, and if you watch all the way through, I'm going to explain quickly the trajectory of this channel. I'm going to upload one documentary a month where we explore an actor and a director or other famous people in the entertainment industry, but mostly in the movie industry. And then there will be like weekly uploads of video essays surrounding cool subjects and topics, and of course movie reviews just like this one. I'm aiming for like 3 to 4 videos a month. So in March, I'm aiming to get this one, obviously, and I'm going to do a Oscar predictions, and then there's a documentary coming out at the end of the month, which I think will be very good. So if you're interested in that, I would very much appreciate if you'd hit the like button and subscribe, turn on push notifications and stuff like that so you don't miss out on the uploads. Thank you for watching, and have a great time.
A little bit of a movie star now. So I wanted to ask you about, getting fan mail and...
It's really cool. It's just, people come up to me on the street and they're so enthusiastic about the film.